Welcome to Socks on or Off podcast in your studio.
Yeah.
This is
man.
this is amazing, actually, guys. If you see this setup, it's pretty legit, man.
Yeah, it's something else, dude. It's I got extremely blessed to be here, man. Really.
Good.
I met a guy who I was looking for at the time I was about to go rent a different office space.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time a guy that I go to church with stepped up and he was like, "Hey man, I got this spot, you should come check it out." So I came and checked it out and he was like, "It's yours if you want it," you know.
Hell yeah.
So
See, man, that's the beauty of just like relationships with people, because when people see the genuine side of a person, like something as simple as, yeah, man, use this space or do something with
Yeah.
with your talent, and when they believe in you, it's like a whole nother boost of confidence, man. And I feel like that's something that is big in what we're about to talk about right now.
yeah, absolutely.
So we first met a year ago, something like that. Had you on my podcast, and we got to know you a little bit more. Your journey from young man all the way to the man you are now. But there was a part in there that a lot of people struggle with in that story, and it was addiction. And that is what we'll be talking about today. So if you just want to, again, give your introduction a little bit. And
So my name's Frank Thompson. I'm a videographer, content creator, business owner now. I just got the LLC this week.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's a big deal, you know, because like you said, man, I've been a drug addict my whole life. Convicted felon, been to prison, you know, and so if you'd have told me that I'd have my own, not only do I have a business, I have a 501c3, which is a nonprofit where we help at risk youth who are in the DHS system.
Okay.
And so whenever these kids leave DHS, when they age out, they don't have nowhere to go. Most of them don't have birth certificates, social security cards. Don't know how to get it either because they've been in the system,
Yeah.
you know, for most of their lives, which up to like 18.
Mm-hmm.
So we step in there to try to help fill the gap with what they need when they leave, help them figure out how to get GEDs and things like that. But all that comes from, you know, being a drug addict my whole life. You know?
Right.
I got my first pistol charge when I was 12 years old. I was drinking and smoking weed by the time I was 10 and 11, which is what led me to having the pistol charge. Just trying to impress the guys, you know. Like,
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I used to hang out with all what I thought at the time were the older kids, you know, but they were like 15, 16. I thought they knew the world, you know. And I was 10, 11 years old, and I would hang around them, and they thought it was funny to get the kid drunk, you know.
Yeah.
Get a little 10-year-old, 11-year-old drunk, staggering around. It's funny, you know. They're 15-year-old kids, you know. I mean, how did I know what it was?
Yeah.
I was just hanging out with them, and as I got older, you know, progressed through high school, pistol charges, weapon charges, drug charges. I got my first 2 weapon charges in 7th grade, and then I got a possession of narcotics with intent in my 8th grade. So all this was before my freshman year of high school. So I'd already been arrested 3 different times for serious charges.
Yeah.
But it impressed the people I wanted it to impress, and it made people look at me a little different. You know, when you're a kid and I was scared all the time, but I wouldn't tell nobody that.
Right.
You know, that's why I carried around a gun and a knife. You know, but they thought I was just down, and so like, you know, I'm feeding into that, and I let that carry me, you know, on through high school. High school didn't get no better. Dropped out. Met baby mama, had some kids. You know, and then drug my family through a cycle of just endless alcoholism and drug addiction,
Right.
you know, and what comes with drug addiction, you know, it's at some point you stop wanting to buy it, you know, you stop wanting to spend your own money on it, and you want to start trying to figure out how you can make money off of it so you can basically stay high for free, you know. And that's where you start getting in dangerous waters. That's when you start meeting people who get it on a whole nother level. And then you start fucking with these people over there. And then, you know, and then now you're having to keep a bag for this and this and this. And then, you know, debt happens. And, you know, and then that's where you start hearing about all that shit that you hear in the streets, man. People killing people over debt, over this and that. Prison's the same way. You get in prison, the number one rule is, hey, do not get in debt, you know. I mean, it's crazy. I watch more people fight and fall out over who owes money over who owes who, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You would think it's the telling and the snitching and the things and like that, and like, yeah, that happens, but more frequently it's, hey, he owes me money, right? And I don't give a damn what nobody says. In prison, it's all about race, you know. It's all about who you're with. If you're, you know, most black people I know, they're either with the Bloods or they're with the Crips. And if you're with the Crips or you with the neighborhoods, you 60s, like, it's crazy how it works in prison. You ride your own car is what they call it. Natives, we ride our race. All of our native brothers, the SA homies do the same. You know, white boys, they got their people, and so everybody rides their race. And it's like, you know, for instance, let's just say you with one set and I'm with one, you know, and then I get something from you off a commissary and I say I'm gonna pay you back and I don't, you know. Now I'm in debt to you, but you can't just come run up on me like that, because then it would cause a bigger problem on the yard, you know. Right. And so like, and then, you know, it's like eventually you're gonna want your money, and then this is gonna happen, and then, you know, and then it's gonna break. I've seen a lot more of that in prison than anything else, you know. What people would do to other people for money, you know, or for the debt. So in that life, that's just kind of what it is. And I got into it heavy, you know. Started messing with people I shouldn't have been messing with. Robbed some people I shouldn't have robbed, you know, and just a whole bunch of things that happened. I don't want to go into all the details.
Right.
But it sent me on the run for my life, you know, and you would think that would be the end, but it's not. You know, I had some people hunt me down for 3 weeks because I owed them some money, like some legitimate money, and these are some legitimate people.
Mm-hmm.
Legitimate enough that I was in fear for my life, you know, because I thought I had it, and I didn't. And, you know, when they come looking for me, and then I had at the same time, at the last few times that I was out, I had these people looking for me. They wanted to kill me. I had U.S. Marshals looking for me because I was on the run for some charges that I had got. And then I had the U.S. Marshals after me because somebody had burnt my house to the ground.
Golly.
Yeah, and this is all simultaneously at one time.
Yeah.
You know, the same people that was looking for me are the ones who burnt my house down. And so when the fire marshals found out that somebody poured gasoline on the front porch, and it was an arson, it was somebody set it on fire. It wasn't an accident. So then the fire marshals wanted to start asking me questions, you know, and I'm so high and on one, you know. But the thing is, my kids lived in the house with me. My baby mama lived there. So I put a lot of things, a lot of people, and a lot of, you know, everything. And I put all that aside for drugs and alcohol, you know, which is really what we're here to talk about, right? It's really getting down to the
core of everything.
Yeah, because I know you had made a post, and when you had made that post, I thought about it, you know, and I hear it a lot. It's like, man, why do people? Because when you see somebody who's in addiction, right, and it goes all the way back to drinking in the Prohibition days, you know. It goes back to the book of AA, started in the 1900s, and there's a passage in the book of AA that says, you know, they're talking about drunks. They were like, oh, you know what? She's a good girl. You'd think he'd want to quit for her. And so, like, that translates. Like, they got kids, they got this. You'd think that they'd want to get clean and provide a better life for their kids or their wife or their, you know, whatever it is. And for somebody who doesn't understand addiction, like, yeah, it's easy to say, I do it for my kids, you know? But for somebody who's actually, that knows what that feeling's like, you know, and like, there's so much value in drugs and alcohol to a drug addict and an alcoholic, you know? There's a lot of value in it. And I don't think a lot of people understand what that is. You know, for example, if I was to take a drink right now, right? If I had a drink and I took that first drink, for what would happen to me immediately is everything would get a little warmer. You know, the world would get a little softer. And the more that I have the drink, my relationship with people gets better. You see, because I'm an introvert, I'm scared of motherfuckers too, you know? But when I start drinking, if I have a couple drinks in me, I feel 10 feet tall. And then you get a little smaller, less intimidating, And then my relationship with people, it deepens when I'm drinking or I'm using. I swear I'll go to the end of the earth for you right here, right now. We'll rock until we die, Like, it's a whole different side of me when and this is just drinking, But see, what happens is that my perception of reality changes, because as I'm sitting here thinking, hey, we'll be best friends, every drink I take, we're going to be best friends and the world isn't that bad. And then this and that, my perception of reality shifts, and I want to live in that.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, it's not real, That's why a lot of people, they come off a bender and all this shit, and then they look at everything that they did, and they just feel shame and guilt because that's not who they are, and they didn't mean half the shit, but they were living in this perceptive reality that's better than their life. And so when you wake up, we'll just stick to alcohol for now, but when you wake up, you're hungover, you feel like shit, you have all this pain, but you know what's going to relieve the pain.
The same shit that caused it.
Exactly. And that is the circle of addiction. That is the circle of alcoholism. We drink to relieve the pain, and since it causes more pain, and we drink to, and because everybody I know who has an addiction problem or an alcohol problem, we might have started drinking and using for fun, peer pressure, whatever it may be. But when we started, it changed how we felt about ourselves. And when it changes how you feel about yourself, you don't want to lose it.
Right.
Because I didn't, when my dad left, I felt abandoned. I felt, worthless. My mom ended up getting with this other guy, and he used to like to beat on us for sport. And so I felt scared. I felt threatened. But when I started drinking, I took that first drink at like 10, 11 years old. I didn't feel none of that. I had this guy explain it to me like this. He said, it's like, for the first 10 years of my life, I was walking around with this big hole in the middle of me, right? And the edges around it are raw and it's rough. And the wind's blowing through it. And it's cold wind. And, you can feel it, And it's just like, some people, everybody has this feeling, right? But some people, they'll go to church and the hole will close for them, right? They'll get an education, their hole will close. They'll meet somebody, meet their wife, meet their forever person. That hole closes. They feel like they are whole, right? I tried to stuff shit in this hole, but it would open. Tried church, tried girl after girl
Everything
after girl, tried education, tried all these things to fit in this hole that would close, but it always opened. And then I had that first drink. And then for once, my hole closed. And I could be who I wanted to be. I could say what I wanted to say. I could pretend all these things that I pretend about myself. I could actually carry it out because I had the confidence to do it, start getting and then you wake up the next morning, and it's back open. It's going to close it, right? And so that's what I mean by the value. The value that drugs and alcohol had in my life was it made me feel at one with myself, But the thing about it is, obviously, it's the worst thing you can use to fill this void in your life, But you can't just tell me, hey, you know what? Just believe in God. Just believe in this, or just stop drinking. Because now you're asking me to just walk around with this big ass hole, And so it's like, until the individual understands the true value that drugs and alcohol have in your life, you'll never, and a lot of this is, I'm going to say this too, a lot of this is my opinions, right? Because in the rooms of recovery, we have different ways, there's the 12 steps of whether it's NA, AA, CR, CA, whatever it is. Everybody has a journey. So there's not really one way to recover.
Right.
But in that, we have a lot of suggestions and we make no really absolutes. So a lot of what I'm saying is just my theories and my opinions and things that I've heard that made sense to me, I just wanted to say that because I don't want people like, yeah.
And that's the thing that I want this podcast to be, is understanding that with opinions and with conversation, bigger things can now start to blossom from that. Yeah, everything's a suggestion. Yeah, everything is just what works for you. But eventually there will be, through conversation, through healing, I think a right way to do it. Like some people, like you said, you're an introvert. Well, if alcohol helped you cope, maybe surround yourself by like-minded people to where now you're starting to close that hole just slower than you would have with the alcohol. Or if it helps you shape your reality however it did. Well, now, as on the other side of that, shape it a little bit different. Make sure you maybe get your nails done or cut your hair more often. And what we need to do is that life can be possible. And that's the beauty of your story or other people's story, is to show that recovery is actually possible. Like I lost 169 pounds. I didn't think it could be me until it was. You feel me? But it took that first step. It took that realization that maybe this gotten too far. Maybe I'm starting to hate myself more than whatever food or alcohol, whatever is giving me comfort. When I looked in that mirror, I didn't recognize myself. Even when I look back at old pictures, I'm like, it's not me. It's this person may look like me, may act like me, but this is the man I was truly meant to be. And once we start showing people like it's okay to regret things, like when you were saying all the things that you did in your past, like looking at you, I'm like, this is what a true man should be. And when we are young and we look up to these older kids, we need that father figure or that masculine mentality to feel something. But in reality, everything that you just said is masculine. I think Kevin Gates, he was like, being vulnerable is the most masculine thing you can do. Sitting here giving you all of me and knowing that you can receive it poorly or receive it great. I'm giving you everything. Because I don't want you to find something out about me that I could have told you myself.
The thing about being vulnerable is it's humility. It's surrender. Because if I choose to sit here and tell you something about myself, what I'm doing is I'm now giving you all the power to do what you want to with it. And in that, there's trust that can be broken. There's so many things that can go wrong. Right, but the flip side of that coin is there's so many things that can go right. I have a sponsor, and he has 37 years of sobriety. Right, I'll be 35 in February. So whenever I decided I wanted to really take a shot at working a recovery program, I looked around, and this is I love him. This is old white dude. Looks nothing like me.
Right.
He likes baseball. I don't know shit about baseball. We didn't have a lot in common when I asked him to help me figure this thing out. He had one thing that I wanted. He had more sober and clean time than I've been alive. And in my mind, it's like, here's a man who probably hasn't gone through a whole lot,
right,
and made it out the other side still sober. And when I looked at that, and I thought, backing up a little bit, there's the number one thing that people have to understand before they can even start this journey of recovery. It takes honesty. And at least in the 12-step program, the first step that we have is you have to admit you are powerless over drugs and alcohol and that your life is unmanageable. And for the longest time when I looked at that, I thought, okay, it's easy for me to recognize that my life is unmanageable because of the alcohol and drugs. But that's not what it says. It says, admit that you are powerless over drugs and alcohol. That is life that is life high, that is life drunk, right? But then there's a comma there, and commas mean end of thought, next thought.
Yeah.
And that our life has become unmanageable. This is without the drugs and alcohol. I don't understand that my life is unmanageable until I'm not intoxicated or high.
Yeah.
That's when I realized that my life is unmanageable, right? And that's why I go back to the alcohol. And I think true powerlessness for me. And I think I told you this on the phone yesterday. I said my spiritual growth never comes from my virtues.
Right.
It only ever came from my pain. When I was done hurting enough, then I took a step, right? But it didn't happen before. But the last time that I was doing my thing, I remember I was so broken, and I was leaving the casino, and I'd been up all night, and I was high, and I had some dope in my pocket, and I had a point. I was an IV user. I had a loaded rig in my pocket, and it was around wintertime. It was January, right? It was cold as shit outside. I'm walking around this casino, and I'm thinking, man, I got to shoot this thing at some point because I don't want to be walking around with this thing in my pocket, right? But I remember sitting here thinking, I need to stop, right? Like, you can't keep drinking. You can't keep using. But, fuck, you can't quit. And in that moment, I found out what powerlessness was. Right? I know that this is killing me. But I know just as much as that if it's up to me, I'm not going to let it go either. And when I recognize that, I think just like most people, you turn to the only power that you know that's inside of you, whether it be God, the universe, or whatever. Every alcoholic and drug addict I know who has truly hit rock bottom, they turn around and they just say to this inner voice inside them, they probably don't even know who they're talking to, but they're just saying, help. And that's what I did. When I realized that I couldn't stop, but when I couldn't keep going, but I knew I couldn't stop, that's what I did. I just, whoever you are,
right,
I can't quit. I left that casino, I swear, this is like 45 minutes later. I'm walking out of the casino and I get arrested. And they find it, and I never did it. I was going to, but I never did. So when I got arrested, they found the dope, and they found the rig, and I get arrested, and I'm like, more charges.
Yeah,
that cop was cool, man. He didn't even charge me. You know, 'cause I had a warrant out of another county, but I had this moment where I said help to this inner voice, and then I get arrested. And the first thing I don't think, damn, here I go again. I think, I just had my prayer answered because I can't quit on my own.
Right.
And so I'm thinking about this the whole time. This cop is reading me my rights and stuff. And he even told me, he was like, look, man, I don't even want to take you to jail. And I remember looking at him. I was like, this isn't a you thing. This is a God thing. Like, I've been running for too long, you know, and this has nothing to do with you. And this is crazy. This is even after I got out of prison. You know, I got out of prison, I was sober for 15 months, and then I relapsed and took off for another year and a half. This was at the end of that year and a half. And so when I recognized that it was a God thing, that cop was so cool. He was just like, I'm just going to trash this stuff. It wasn't enough to carry a felony charge. It was just enough for personal use, and he could have hit me with a misdemeanor for possession, you know, but he was like, I'm just going to trash it. Go get your stuff together. That was January 19th of 2020. I woke up in jail January 20th of 2020. And when I woke up, I was in this holding cell and thinking over the events that happened and being hurt and broken. And right then was when I made that choice. It was like, I'm never coming back to this. And, you know, that was 5 years ago coming up, you know?
Right.
And but I had to make that choice to honestly look at my situation and say, I can't do this and I need help. And at least in the 12-step program, those are the first 3 steps, man. You admit you were powerless, and it just says come to believe in a power greater than you, could restore you to sanity. And then the third one is you just turn your will over. And, you know, most people get hung up on the God thing. For me, for a while, it was my home group, right? I knew I was powerless, but a power greater than me. I really struggled with the God thing, but here's a bunch of people I know who are staying sober today. That's a power greater than myself. That's what I'm going to believe in, is this group of people. If they're doing it, I can do that. Turn my will over to this group of people. What does that mean? That means whatever they tell me to do, I'm just going to fucking do it. You know, hey, Frank, show up to meetings. Hey, Frank, make coffee. Hey, Frank, chair this meeting. Hey, Frank, go over here and talk to these people in rehab. Anything these people tell me to do, I'm just going to do it, you know? And in that, I found out that these people actually care about me because they care about my condition. you know? And so when they're telling me, hey, go over here and do this, they're not doing it for personal gain. They're not doing it to make money. They're doing it because they know if I practice these things, it will keep me sober today. And that was when I first got into the rooms. And I actually, this Thursday night, the first Thursday of the month, I still go to the rehab. I've been doing this for years now, you know? I still get out here and I still help people. And I still find myself in places where, like I said, with the nonprofit, these are things that if, you know, people who follow me, they don't see. I don't air this side of my life out a lot because that's not what it's for, you know? If I help somebody, I don't want them to think that it was because, you know, they got to where they, you know, because it's like, it's not me, bro. I'm just here to help.
Right.
You know, but there still has to be work that needs to be done. Because I had to have my value system. Because like I said, drugs and alcohol was the most valuable thing to me. You're not going to tell me to get clean and sober. You're not going to tell me to stop drinking and using if you're not going to give me something to replace it with.
Right.
And for me, that replacement was service. When I look at another person who is either strung out or they're struggling, and I see them and I can extend a hand and I can help them, there's no greater feeling in the world. You can't put a price on that, you know? So I had to learn that the best way that I could maximize my recovery was to give it to somebody. That's it. That's all we got. You know? Because it was freely given to me, and now I have to freely give it away. And sometimes I want notoriety for it, you know, because, I mean, who doesn't?
Right, for sure.
You know, sometimes you give, like, the homeless person a couple bucks, and, you know, you just kind of want to look around, see if somebody sees you do it.
Give me a thumbs up.
Yeah,
man.
You know, it's human nature. It's human nature to want the attaboys, and there's nothing wrong with it. But I know that if I feed too much into that, that's going to start being self-feeding. It's going to be self-serving. And now I'm not helping you out of the kindness of my heart. I'm helping you to get noticed.
Right. And
that becomes the exact opposite of what I'm supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. What Frank is supposed to be doing is thinking less of himself, right? Because addiction and alcoholism, all it is just me obsessed with me over everybody. Because I want to get high. I want to, you know, it's a bunch of eyes. And when I put myself in charge, that's what comes of it. And everybody, children, old lady, everybody is left in the wake.
But yeah, I mean, I say that because like we were talking about, and I talk about it a little bit on my podcast. My grandfather was an alcoholic. My mom is an alcoholic. And growing up in that, you think it's normal. You don't see a difference of the person in the sense of like, if they were different, my life would be better. How I saw it is, well, I have the drunk side of my mom and have the sober side of my mom. So it wasn't, if she got better, this is the only thing I would have of her. It's just, this is who she is, period. And what it did to me is really break down my trust a little bit. And I was unable to fully love or feel secure. And when I see different people out on the street, I'm like, man, the impact that just addiction period has on just people in general. Like, we think of addiction only hurting the person. And I saw this post, it was about suicide, but it was like, you're not ending the pain for yourself. You're passing it on to someone else, someone who loves you. And when you were saying, oh, that's a good girl, why can't they stop? Or I've thought about that a lot with your kids. Do you not want to see us grow up? Do you not want to be at a function? And now that I've gotten older and have my own addictions, I think we talked about it. I admitted it on the podcast another time, but I was addicted to pornography forever. Still struggle with it. And when you were saying the body craves it, it was like that with porn as well. And especially losing so much weight, my testosterone built like crazy. And I was getting to the point where I wasn't even thinking about sex. My body was like, hey, bro, you know, it sounds good right now. And it blows my mind because we as individuals start to point judgment at other people like, oh, my sin's not that bad, or porn's not, everybody does porn. But when it starts to rule your life, how are you better than anyone else? And I just wanted to get some type of answer for it, because I feel like that's the form of attack that whoever you believe in, Satan, devil, evil spirits, whatever, that is the most brilliant way to use to destroy someone, because that's like planting a bomb on somebody and sending them into a crowded place. You know, like, you'll steal for what you want, you'll kill for what you want. Shit, people would force women to have sex with them because that urge or that addiction is so strong in their life that it's so hard to break. But the beauty of it is that it's possible. We get so used to, on our phones, on TV, seeing people better than ourselves, and we're like, oh, that's not real. You know, that's on TV, that can't be me. But when you look at it from the outside looking in, it was like, how are they different from you? We can go on TikTok, we can go anywhere and look up recovery stories or weight loss stories, and there's people that said, well, this is how I did it, this is how it's possible. At one point in their life, they were strung out too. At one point in their life, they were fat too, or they had porn addiction. But through some type of journey or steps.
You know what it is, man? It's just it's the refocusing of, I keep saying value system, but that's what it is. You know, like in the Christians, they call it being, you know, reborn.
Mm-hmm.
It's the way that, because this is one thing that I've learned about myself since I've been in recovery, is that I still have the same drives that I had, right? Like when I wanted to do all the shit that I was doing, there was nothing in the world that was going to stop me, right? I remember I started going back and forth to different states, you know, things happening, and, you know, stolen cars, and, you know, and all this other stuff that I was involved in. And it was to the outside world, like, I got my old lady. She'll tell me, she was like, man, I remember that one time that your mom, because I've known her my whole life. She told me, she was like, yeah, there was one time that I remember your mom called me and was like, hey, if you hear from Frank, you know, just stay away from him, call the cops. And you're like, why? What's going on? And some people I had some dealings with, and this is the whole thing when my house caught on fire and stuff. People were looking for me. Like my own family was like, no, you're a danger to yourself. You're a danger to these kids. Like, yeah, they took my kids and all this other stuff. And I was so driven to make a name for myself doing something that if it wasn't for the grace of God, you know, if it wasn't for going to prison, if it wasn't for going to jail, like somebody would have killed me.
Right.
You know, I tell people, it's like, I probably wouldn't have died from an overdose. I probably wouldn't have died, you know, from a car crash, or I would have died, but somebody would have shot me, you know, because I was that person. I would take anything. I would move anything. I was the biggest snake you'd ever see, because it was all in the name of money, profit, you know, substance. I'm going to get mine. When I got clean and I got sober, now, like, I look at my life now, I'm a business owner. Started a 501c3, a nonprofit, you know, doing it simultaneously at the same time.
Right.
Like, as if I don't have enough going on in life. But, you know, it's like one of those things, is like, something's in front of me and I'm going to get it.
Yeah.
Only now there's a whole lot of positive. So, like, you never lose their characteristics. But drug addicts and alcoholics are some of the most powerful people I know, right? Like, you want to talk about perseverance.
Yeah.
Boy, look at how some of these people out here, you know, especially around this time. You start getting into the January, February, you know, it's 12 degrees outside. You still see these people out here walking, getting it, you know. You know why? It's because they ain't got no other choice.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's easy to look down on that. But when you get on this side of the tracks, I still feel that way sometimes. Like, I got to get out here and get it. Why? Because I ain't got no other choice. But life is a little bit easier. The problems that they're not, we call them luxury problems now, you know? I need to go get an oil change in my car.
Yeah.
Like, this is like the fourth one this year, because I live in that car, basically, you know? I'm sitting here throwing this fit about it, you know? But it's like, you got a car.
I got mad I had to pay my car insurance. And I'm like, get pulled over without car insurance and see how mad you'd be.
But you know, it really comes with, I think, when you identify what your problem is.
Right.
You know, and it's at the root of everything, at the root of every sin, at the root of every addiction, whether it be the porn, the drugs, whatever, it's self. It's self. You know, it's believing that you know better than whatever the all power is, right? I choose to believe in the God of the Bible. You can even go back to the book of Genesis, right? The God, when the devil tempted Eve, it was with an apple, but the apple wasn't the thing, right? It was him creeping in and putting in that thought and doubting the goodness of God. That's really what came from it. You know, it wasn't here, eat this apple and be disobedient. It was like, well, did he really say that to get Eve to doubt the goodness of God? Self. You know better than the Almighty, right? I know better than the Creator, the Almighty. I know what's best for my life, right? And that essentially puts me into the driver's seat.
Yeah.
And that's where life falls apart. I've never met a person who successfully lorded over their own life. You know, and that should say a lot. I know there's like atheists and all these other people out there that don't believe in God. That's cool, man. But check this out. How have you maintained your own standards, right? And I know people get caught up in the, you know, without turning this into a Christian thing, but people get caught up in the commandments and all that stuff, you know, and you know, oh, this is hypocrisy and yada yada yada. It's like, okay, well then, you know, what are the standards in your life,
right? And
how well do you hold those,
right?
I break mine all the time, you know, like I have a standard so it's like, yeah, of course I'm weak, I'm broken, I'm a feeble man. I have to believe that there's something out there greater than me, you know, and I put my trust in that. And so far, I mean, obviously, it's still going pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, but it also comes with, I don't ever think that I'll ever be at a point where it's like, I got this beat. You know, like you were saying, bars and everything are all still around. I'm very cautious because I still perform and I still perform in bars. I usually have somebody with me.
Good.
You know, everybody on my label knows that I'm clean and sober.
One thing that I remembered, and I would like for you to talk about this again. You were not touring. You were somewhere in a different state, but either they were going out or you found out there was an AA meeting that day, and you went there. And can you talk about that a little bit? Because I thought, and that's the thing, people, like with me, losing weight has now became my addiction, and when I can't do it, I don't feel okay. And even if it's running outside, shadow boxing, whatever the case may be, I have to immerse myself into whatever made me feel safe when I didn't have nothing. And that's the beauty about these communities of AA, NA, etc., is that you get around people who look different, but you feel like they are you. You share your life with them, basically. In the sense of not, you know, this is my story, blah, blah, blah. It's like heart to heart. Like if you, and I'm pretty sure now if somebody came in here sloppy drunk, you would like break down because you see yourself in that person. And I thought that was the coolest thing that you did. So if you can talk about that.
So we were doing this show up in Arkansas and I didn't know, I was like 6 or 7 months sober. And I got an opportunity to go and play for these people. And I get on the tour bus or on this van. It was a van. And the first thing, the headliner gets on the van, and the first thing he said, he asked the driver, he was like, "Where's the cocaine at?" You know, that's exactly what I'm saying. Bro, look, 5 years clean. I just went to Mexico for the first time to Cozumel, and they were like, tequila, weed. Blow,
man.
They just was like, blow, and I looked at the person I was with. I was like, let's get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
You start offering free cocaine, we got problems. But we was at that point. He was like, "Where's the cocaine at?" And I was like, "Oh, fuck."
Yeah.
And so we went to Arkansas. We did a show that night. Saturday morning, I wake up and like everybody had gotten just, you know, it's a show. It's touring acts. We had, you know, a couple people come up from Florida, and then a dude come from Arizona, and then this dude came from Illinois. So all these people came from different places to play a show in Arkansas, and I was just in Oklahoma. And the guy who owned the van is the one who got me on the van, and he didn't even end up going with us. So it was an entire thing. But I get up there and like Friday night they all party and everything, and I was like, I'm like I said, 6-7 months sober. I'm still trying to figure out if I want to get, if I still want to do this.
Yeah, it's bro. I'm not gonna say it's hard. Like I know, but bro, I couldn't imagine like how hard that is. But
yeah. So it's and so I was like, you know what? If I don't go to a meeting this weekend, I'm not gonna make it.
Yeah.
And so I just Googled it. I was like AA meetings, and I was in Mountain Home, Arkansas, which is a small little nothing town up in the hills of Arkansas, up in the mountains up there. And there was 2 meetings, and going back to the higher power thing, going back to the God thing, I was like, God, I got to figure out how to get to this church, is what it was. And so we had a lady who was shuttling us back and forth to the venue. From the hotel to the venue is about 3 miles. And so we had a lady who was shuttling us. And after the show, like everybody ended up hanging around. It was called the Royal 66. It was off the Route 66 venue in Arkansas. And the lady picked me up, and she was taking, like, show's over, everybody's still hanging out drinking. I'm like, I don't need to be hanging out in a bar. So I asked for a ride, and the lady gives me a ride. And so I asked her, because we had 2 shows we had to do. And so I asked her for a ride. I was like, hey, do you know where this church is? And, she was like, why do you want to go there? So I told her, I was like, I'm an alcoholic, and I'm in recovery, and I'm trying not to drink. And if I don't make it to a meeting tomorrow morning, I don't know if I'm going to make it tomorrow night. And she did. She turns out her husband was a recovering drug addict. And,
oh, wow.
Yeah, she was in what we call Al-Anon, right? Al-Anon is AA. Basically, it's the same thing. It's a program for people who... the family members of alcoholics and drug addicts. So like how I say that I'm powerless over drugs and alcohol, in Al-Anon they say they're powerless over the drug addict and alcoholic. And so it's a program for the people, family members.
Yeah.
Because it's like you're watching your loved one die, killing themselves, right? In a sense, you're mourning the living because you don't know. It's but they have a group for that. So all these people get together, and it's called Al-Anon. And so while her husband was in his program, she was in a program. And she told me, she was like, yeah. She's like, I'll be here. And she picked me up that morning and took me to the AA meeting and dropped me off. And I was sat in the room with 3 old white dudes in the middle of Arkansas. There was only 4 of us in there. They didn't know me. But something about, you said, man, you step in that room. I can be anywhere in the world. I step into an AA meeting, I feel like I'm at home.
Yeah.
Because it is. We're not here to compare war stories. We're not here to compare how well our lives are going. We're here to say, hey man, check this out. I don't want to drink today. I remember I remember one of my first times I got pissed that I was living with a roommate, and he was starting to relapse. And I had this massive resentment towards him, right? Not because he was drinking and using in the apartment we lived in together. Was that he was doing it. He was doing it, and I couldn't. That pissed me off more than anything in the world. Because, like, I'm working on getting my kids back, and I'm trying to do this and this. And he don't have kids, so if I go off the wagon with him, I have more to lose. I'm just starting to gain the trust back from baby mama and stuff. And you would think that's what would make me mad. And on surface level, that's what I made it all about, was how I was pissed that he had this stuff in the house where I have my kids. And I made it about me. But really at the core of it, I was pissed because he was drinking and using, and I couldn't. And yeah, it's not right. Yeah, it's probably petty. But I remember I went into my meeting and I said that. And I was like, I'm mad because he's drinking in my house, and I can't even have any. And you know what? Nobody in there was like, that's a stupid thought. They were just like, yeah, I know exactly what it feels like to want to drink and not have, like, some days I don't drink. Some days I don't get to drink. Like there's 2 different sides of it, and I've gotten to the point now where it's like, you know what? It's still that way, but most times it's like, I don't drink. I go out to these shows and stuff. People offer me drinks, and it's like, no, sir, I don't drink. Why? It's just not my thing. Yeah. I don't have to go into the whole story of why anymore.
For sure.
But there are still some days where it's like, I don't get to drink. You know, and those days are harder, but you know, we have a place for it.
Yeah.
You can go into any AA room in the world and say, "I really want to have a drink, but I can't." And I swear, you'll see black, white, brown, men, women, whatever. You'll see people stand up and unite over this one person who's struggling today.
Yeah.
And like that's what it's really about. I think that's what it's really about is getting in that, you know, community, if you will.
Yeah. And that's the thing that I feel like life is full circle, because when we look at, like you were saying, all these people that will huddle around us and shit, probably tackle us if we want to go to the bar or wherever. And the reason, and I'm just outside looking in, the reason to me it feels so unique is because that little boy who was 12 that was looking up to those teenagers, those boys themselves, we are now filling that hole. So that 12-year-old is now getting that hug from all these other people that truly mean him well. And when somebody hears like, yeah, I want to, they look at it as like, man, we know, like, it's difficult when people tell me they don't want to go to the gym, but they are. I'm like, bro, I understand.
Get it.
I understand. Yeah. Like,
because not every day is like one of those like
Yeah.
David Goggins, you know, like motivational
Right.
moments. Some days it's just like,
yeah, bro. And that's the burden that we all hold on to, is we feel embarrassed that we still crave these things. You know, like I have a lot of good stuff going on, but I feel embarrassed when I have to look up porn or I have to look up different things that make me just satisfied for a moment. So it's hard for me to talk about these things because I see other people either having a lot of women or they don't need that to feel like a man. You feel me? And when I do have these vulnerable moments and somebody understands or they gets it, then it's like, all right, maybe I'm not crazy. Because a lot of people in my opinion, they get to a point to where it's like, all right, I'm the only one that feels this way. I'm the only one that's going through this. And that's why this podcast was so important to me, because we get online and we see a post, nobody understands me, or I'm so alone, and there's 42,000 shares, there's 1,500 comments, and we don't see the people that are crying out like us. We just see it like, all right, no, they're far away or they don't understand. In that small town, 3 people felt like you. Mm-hmm. They all went to that same church because they understood you. Mm-hmm. Not knowing you at all, but they understood. Mm-hmm. Those 3 people helped you let's just say another week until you got to another meeting or another
day, man.
Yeah, like,
because like I knew I had to do my thing. I still had to show up for, you know, the performance Saturday night, and if it wasn't for those guys up there, you know, and the thing is, I don't remember what none of them said. I couldn't even tell you what they looked like. But in the moment when I needed to be around somebody who knew what I needed, who knew where I was at, that was where I found myself.
And that's the beauty of people, man, and that's why it blows my mind how divided we are, especially with this presidency. Regardless of what people think, if we just looked at somebody and say, "I love you," that would go so much further than look at you and be like, I don't like something about you. I don't like that you do this way or that way. For what? Yeah. What is a conflict going to do besides divide us even more? And then when we start pointing fingers, the truth is no longer the truth anymore. It starts to be perception. Well, alcohol is worse than porn, so why are we even comparing shit? Yeah. Is it really? You know, like, it's destroying his life this way, destroying your life that way. Maybe you can see his, we can't see yours, but you internally feel it.
And you know, man, that's the thing with this being around people in this program. You know, it's in our steps, because there's something that they figured out, right? And I mean, I'm not going to go into the history of the steps, but step 1, 2, and 3 is your relationship with God. Step 4, 5, and 6 is your internal stuff, right? Handling your emotions, getting vulnerable. What are your biggest resentments? You get into, 6, 7, and 8, 9. That's you start walking into your amends process where you start trying to clean up some of the wreckage of your past, and you make a list of all the people you have hurt. Some of them might never want to see you again, and but the ones who do, the mom, the brothers, the this, clean that up. You make these amends, but then you get into the 10, 11 that's maintaining it. But then 12 is what was the important one? It's once you've had this spiritual awakening, once you've done these steps and seen how much they can change in your life, now you turn around and carry it to somebody else. If you don't carry this message to somebody, you're not gonna. You might, but people get bitter. If you're not constantly working with people. That's why I constantly work with people. That 12-year-old kid. It put me in a position to where now I understand these 12-year-old kids that I'm around. I know what it's like to not have mom. Mom was drunk, not have dad around. Seek guidance from these other adolescent teenagers, and then get yourself in hot water, getting pistol charges. The kids that I mentor, most of them got criminal cases from the same thing because you know what? They were hanging around so-and-so, and they caught robbery cases, they caught gun cases, assault cases. And to top that off is they're living in group homes. They're living in DHS group homes. They don't have mom and dad. So they're angry at who? They're angry at God. They're angry at, the system. And it's just like, I know what that feels like now. I know what that feels like because I was there, but I can now tell them, And the thing with these teenagers is you can't tell them much. You got to show them.
Yeah.
So I show up, I mentor. We're starting a transition house, so when they do age out of DHS, they can move into our house, and we help them get jobs and Social Security, and like all this other stuff. Like you can't tell these kids that you love them and that God loves them. You got to show it.
Yeah.
Right. And then all that other stuff because they don't give a shit. I could tell them, hey, look, they'd be like, man, why you do this stuff? Because God saved me.
Yeah.
And they're just like, all right, whatever, but thanks. Good looking out. Like that's all you get from them most days. But it's like that's cool, man. Because they're starting to see somebody who is a true believer in Christ, God, and in the power of one helping another. And they might not stick with them today, but one day, they're gonna look back and say, you know what? This guy said he was a man of God, and he didn't just say it with his mouth. I put my money up for it, and it's hard. Nonprofit work is fucking hard.
I bet.
Confusing. It's dealing with the federal government, trying to get money so I can siphon it down to these kids. And, so with all the grant writers and stuff that I deal with, everybody asked me the same thing. They're like, what's your end goal? What did you trying to do? How much money? I was like, look, I just want to make sure that these fucking kids get what they need to get. That's it. You ain't got to pay me shit.
Right.
I just want this to go through the proper channels, so I'm not responsible for the taxes of it at the end of the year. You start raising $80,000, $90,000. That's a lot of tax.
Yeah.
If we do it this way, it goes to them, right? And it's like, give me who I need to get. Let me figure this out. But what I was saying is like, every Tuesday morning, I sit at a table with my sponsor. My sponsor says got 37 years. The other guys he sponsors. Another guy who sits at this table has 38.
So I'm sorry. When you say sponsor, what does that mean to people who doesn't know?
He's the guy who guides me through my steps.
Okay.
That's all the sponsor does. Is he like if you were like, how do I do the steps?
Yeah.
What do I need to do to get over to help try to combat this addiction or alcoholism? All right, here's the 12 steps. Okay, so how do I do them? Okay, well let me show you. Kind of like a guide.
Okay.
That's it. It's a guide through the steps. Let me show you how we did it. And there's only, and there's a book on it, but so, and then plus it's an accountability part. It's like me getting vulnerable and honest with another person. So I sit down with my sponsor. He's 37 years. And then there's another guy at our table. He's 38, 9 years. There's another guy at our table. He's got 50 years, and then, so there's all these men that I'm around. And then I show up with my little nickel. I got 5 in January.
Hey. And, congratulations, buddy. I'm proud of you.
Thanks. But to somebody, that's a lot of time, and so that's the balance for me. I'm around all these old men, so I can't come to them and say, "Oh, this is what I know," and this is what because they'll just kind of let me.
Yeah, all right, young fella.
Let me talk. The worst part is when they just let me talk, and then they're like, "You done?" And I'm like, "Fine."
Yeah.
But it does something for my humility. It does something for my ego. It keeps it in check. It's like, Frank, you don't know everything. But then on this side, I got all these kids. So to them,
You know the world.
I know. And all I'm doing is giving them the information that I'm getting here. So it's constant flow. There's spirituality, there's growth coming in from these men, wisdom that I'm getting, and then it's going out. It's going to these young men, you know, and I'm just the channel in a sense. I'm just here to just pass the knowledge on, pass on the experience. And that, in doing that, I'm accountable to being over here. Over here, I'm a student. Over here, I'm a teacher. You know, it's the way of the world that it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
And it's no longer just kind of like how I used to pick people up when I was selling dope. Hey, let me show you how to break this down. This is what this is. This is how much this sack is. This is how much this weight is. Da-da-da-da. Same way. You know, I learned it from somebody. And then, you know, so the same way that I was sowing evil in the world, now it's like I'm trying to sow life back into the world. You know, and it's taking this, giving it here. Right. So then when I do it that way, it keeps me in this balance where it's like, I'm not the shit.
Right.
There's somebody out there who's doing way better than me,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but I'm not lost. There's people out there doing way worse than me.
Yeah.
So it keeps me on this even level.
And one thing that I love, when you were saying the humility part, I started jujitsu a couple weeks ago, and seeing people there that I'm older than, that it's way more experience, and you have to like get in order by rank, right? And you look around, and instead of feeling like not embarrassed, but like, how can I?
Intimidated?
Yeah, intimidated or like just upset that, man, these kids are younger than me, but they can still like do more stuff than.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, bro, like you have to open yourself up and put petty shit aside. Like, pride is such an odd thing. Like, it can destroy you and it can build you up. But what I do is look at everything as if it's just information, not whom it's coming for. Like, if you were younger than me and I was older than you, and you had, let's just say, 5 years of experience of sobriety, and I wanted to get sober, I'm not going to come to you and you be like, well, you do this, this, and this. Nigga, you don't know what you're talking about. You're young. Like, no, for what? Right? We all have something to give each other. And when I saw these people, and I'm like, okay, they all started right here. Right. And now they get to give me something while also learning from somebody else. And it's a beautiful cycle that, when we do it correctly, can heal the world, right? We hear these break the cycle thing, but let's create a cycle of healing. Let's create a cycle of love. Like, there's always going to be somebody at the top. Our ancestors are gone, but at one point they were young men. They were middle-aged men. They were old men, and now they're gone. Life doesn't end in a sense, like when, let's just say we were God, right? And nobody had names, but we're just looking at this specific area, and we see a boy, right? He grows up, alcoholism, adult. We see another boy, alcoholism, adult, and it's like, nothing is different between them. But we look at these people and be like, no, they just fucked up somewhere else, or this person needs to go to jail because they fucked up their life, and not seeing that we are all the same. That generation had nothing to do with this generation, but we're following the same destructive path. Alcoholism is not a new thing. It's been going on for years and years and years. But we look at these people as just individual drug addicts, and not seeing that this is a war in itself. That if we start having these nonprofits that help people, or we start making it like, what is it going to do putting fucking this may cause cancer on cigarette things? That's not helping anyone.
Yeah.
You feel me? Like, I don't care. Some people can't even fucking read. You feel me? And we have to stop getting to this point to where it's like, all right, this person just needs to break the cycle and things are going to get better. Well, if you break something, you're just left with broken glass. You have to build something up.
Yeah. I think the best thing that I've heard, that I know, it's like when we look at the world on a grand scale, yeah, there's no beating this thing.
Yeah.
There's no answer. There's not. There's no one cure to fix all. I know people who have been doing what I'm doing now for decades, and then, they lose somebody dear to them and they go back out. and then they spend the rest of their life trying to get sober again, and they end up dying drunk in their own vomit. Like that happens. And there's all kinds of things that happen in this world, and you never know what could come at you. But the one thing that I do know is that even in the Bible, when you look at Christ and what Christ did, yeah, he healed multitudes. Yeah, he fed multitudes. But what was really accounted was the one at a time person, right? He went out of his way for the one person, came back for the one person, healed the one person at a time. And yeah, you might not be able to fix the world. Yeah, you might not be able to help drug addicts as a whole. But if you know somebody who's struggling, you might be able to make a difference. I tell people all the time, you know what? Just instead of turning your blinders on, take them to a meeting.
Yeah.
I've never been to and people who aren't out addicts or alcoholics, they think they're not welcomed, and that's so far from the truth. I wouldn't recommend going in there just to go in there and see what it's all about. If you don't struggle with the problem, you can. Nobody's, it's be a little awkward, but if you know somebody who needs it, say, hey, come to this thing with me, and then we'll go out to dinner.
Yeah.
Come to this thing with me, and then let me buy you some food. Something. I mean, there's some, and you know what? It might not change them in that moment. It might not, but you know what? When the time comes, they'll know where to go. So it's like that one person at a time. If you can reach out to somebody, hey,
yeah,
you should come to me with this thing. Bribe them, shit, fuck it, whatever you got to do. At least give it an honest shot, because at the very least, what, you're gonna lose $20-$30 on dinner,
right?
Is that more valuable than trying?
One thing that I love about the Bible is how it correlates with life even to this day, right? And there's I'm paraphrasing this loosely, but there's a verse in there that it's talking about parents, but it was like, if you don't raise your kids to know and to love me, and they die in their sin, the blood is on your hands. But if you teach them to love me and they still disobey, you're free from all wrongdoing. And I feel like us, just as people, if we have the privilege of not having to deal with addiction, I feel like it should be up to us to help someone that struggles with that. Because who are we to look at that and be like, not my fight, not my problem. It's your family.
Yeah.
They stole from me.
And you know what? The thing is, you never know who's going to... The lady who saved my life, I credit her all the time. Her name's Chris Wise. She's the mayor of Bristol now. But when I met her, she was a yoga teacher who brought a yoga class into a jail. I was in Creek County Jail. This is right after I got arrested for that thing leaving the casino I was just talking about. I ended up in Creek County Jail, and she brought a yoga class in there. And that's where I met her. And if it wasn't for that woman, we had an honest conversation in this multi-purpose room of Creek County Jail. Nobody in there, just us. It was me, her, and there was like 4 other guys. She was asking us about kids and stuff. And like I said, I knew I was running from God. And so when she started asking about children, I tried to not make eye contact with her. And she seen that, and then she asked me. And so I told her about my kids. And she seen I was fighting back tears. And this lady, she's an older lady, looked me in my eyes, and she seen that I was trying to not cry because I was talking about my kids. And she says, the way you feel right now, your kids probably feel that every day because you're not there. And then in that moment, it was like all this fake facade that I had got pierced by this arrow of truth, and I just cried, in front of these dudes in jail, in front of this older lady who's talking about yoga. I'm sitting there bawling because she was right. And she was like, what are you going to do? And never thought about it in a moment. But then I just said, rehab. And then I said it. I was like, probably go to rehab, And then she's like, I don't believe that. She says, what are you going to do? And so then I said it a little bit louder. I was like, I'm going to go to rehab. And she says, if you're going to go to rehab, I'll make sure you have a ride. And this conversation, never thought about going to rehab until that moment. When I got out of jail, went to rehab, and then COVID happened. And while I was in this rehab, this lady wrote me these little cards. I still have them. She would just write me encouragement, just to not quit, don't give up, keep going. I'm about to have dinner with her tomorrow. You know, she's a really dear. She lives in Bristol. She's the mayor of Bristol. My kids end up moving to Bristol with their mom, and so like they know the mayor. So you know, it's amazing.
It's beautiful.
But she wanted to help somebody. It was the whole reason she went in there. She was trying to find a way to help people who were unreachable. And you know what? Out of everybody she taught in there, not, you know, she tells me all the time, she was like, I think I just started doing that thing just to meet you, because she saved my life, you know. And now I'm on to doing different things. And so it's like, you don't, and she's the thing is, she's not an addict, she's not an alcoholic, she's a yoga teacher,
right?
You know, she doesn't understand it, she didn't understand it, and she was just trying to get a better understanding. And in that, you know, we met, and she changed my life when it came to prayer and meditation and stuff. Changed my life, you know. And you know, like I said, now it's like we both kind of look at it. We were on the news, this story, like somebody got this hold of this story, and Channel 6 came out to her house and interviewed us and told this story, you know, because it was like one of those. But it's just like, I'm a part of that. Like, you don't know who you're gonna help, you know. And then now I turn around. Whenever she became mayor, she was like, hey, we need help with starting some kind of addiction thing out here. So I started a meeting in Bristol, you know. And it was funny because the one person who helped me, now I'm turning back and I'm giving back to the same community that sent me to prison. I sent myself to prison, but it was
judge, in that city.
Their judge signed the transfer papers. But it just came full circle, you know, because she just wanted to help, you know. So it's like, you don't have to be an alcoholic or a drug addict to reach somebody who is. You know, you just gotta care.
Yeah.
Just give it a shot, you know.
So earlier you were telling me that you got out of jail or prison and you were sober for 15 months and then relapsed. What is that like, relapsing after having so much? I call them good days, you know, like when I didn't watch porn for a while, I was like, man, it's a week of good days. You feel me?
There's a difference between, for me at least, between recovery and abstinence. Right? In that 15 months, I was abstinence because I lived in a sober living house and wasn't allowed to drink. I had to go to AA meetings. I was mandatory, so I had to go 3 times a week. So I went, and you know, I got involved and started doing all the stuff for the sober living house. I was what they call the chapter chair, which I overseen 7 houses within that sober living house organization. I was in charge of, not in charge, but I was the officer of the 7. I spoke for the 7 houses, so I had to make sure everybody was doing what they were doing.
Right.
I was there to hold other people accountable. So it's like I had a job and I felt important, right? And then I got fired from that job. And so then I had this massive resentment. And I was like, I'll show you guys. And I'm going out. And I went out in a relapse, right? So I was just abstinence from alcohol through that whole time. Now, if you'd have asked me in that moment, do you think you're really in recovery? I'd have told you yes. Because in my mind, recovery was I wasn't drinking, I wasn't using drugs. What I know now is that the stopping, the quitting, that's just the doorway. There's a guy who told me, he says, if your only objective is to stop drinking when you come to AA, you're bound to drink again. Because if that's your only goal is to stop, you're bound to start, right? Because it's not, it's like I said earlier, it's my perception. It's what it does for me. There's value in it. Why? Because I feel like such an invaluable person. That's why I drink and I use the way that I do. So if I just stop drinking, guess what? Now I have all these.
You don't feel important, resentments to yourself.
I don't have the emotional maturity. Emotional maturity is a thing, you know, like everything that you went through in your life, that the rejection, the this, the that, all that, people grow from that stuff emotionally, right? Just like you grow physically. As you get older, you grow emotionally. Well, if you're like me and you start grabbing a bottle at 10 and 11 years old, every time I hit one of these things where it's like, I got rejected, well, I'll just get drunk. Fuck them.
Yeah, because that's the only thing that accepts you.
Got fired, I'll just get drunk. So all these things that I'm supposed to, like, to learn how to mourn and learn what grief is, because grief and mourning and depression and sadness are all 4 different emotions and they all feel different. But when you're like me and all you've ever done was went to the bottle, I just make them all sad. And if I'm sad, I get angry. I can just make it anger because anger is going to get me what I want, you know? And so all this stuff that I was supposed to grow maturely from, I wasn't, because I was just killing it with substance. No need to feel it because I'll just get high, get into it. And then now it's like, I started that at 10 and 11. And now it's like you take that 10-year-old kid and you drop him off at 30 years old. And you're saying, okay, now go and be productive for the world. You're grown. You know better. That's where people get it wrong. It's like you're looking at a grown addict and you're like, you're too old. You know better. But it's like, you don't understand.
Inside, that's a 12-year-old kid. You don't understand
the mental damage that we've done. We didn't take the time to grow from this thing. That's why you still see some of these people out here. They're in their 40s and they're still sagging their pants and they're still trying to act like it's just like, you don't understand. You're talking to somebody who's still stuck.
Yeah.
You know, and you're putting all the expectation of the real world on them right now. That's why people relapse.
And that's the interesting thing about remind me her name, the lady, the mayor?
Chris.
Yeah, so that's the difference between Chris and just regular people out here. When someone would look at a recovering addict or just somebody in general and say, you're too fucking old.
Yep.
Why are you acting like that? I see that as you had somebody in your life that forced you to be great in the sense, or forced you to grow up and not handle emotional problems. And when you were saying, I'm upset because he can drink and I can't, it's kind of the same for those type of people who are hurtful. I wish I can be that vulnerable. I wish I can be that open because I have daddy issues or mommy issues, or even though it's not addiction, me myself is an adult that never got to be soft or be a kid because I'm hardened to the world. But people like Chris, they grew up the right way. That maturity or whatever, it was there. She probably didn't have the best of life, or she probably had her own struggles, but she was in a position to where she learned how to live life the right way. So when she saw people that were, I don't want to say worse off like in a bad way, but people that wasn't at her level, she was like, well, the kindness of my heart or the love that I experience, they should know what that is as well. And once you start understanding that people grow up but not really grow up, you start to talk to them at that level. Like I work with a company that houses children in foster care that also has like autism or different developmental issues. And with this kid, he's 14, 15, but I talk to him how I talk to my 4-year-old son. And what it does, and people may hear that and be like, why would you talk to him? He's not stupid. He's not slow. But what it does is meet him on the level to where he understands. Because if I try to have a conversation like me and you are having, it overwhelms him and it frustrates him. Even though he doesn't know he has mental challenges, his body knows like, this is not like, I can't comprehend this. Why can I not comprehend this? But if I meet him at a level where he understands, he starts to feel like a normal kid. He starts to feel alive. And I feel like that's what we need to start doing with people is meet them at whatever they're at. You know, we have this phrase that age doesn't mean you're mature or that you have experience. No, like you have to go through some shit. You have to be willing to sit down and be like, all right, taking myself out of this and now replacing myself with every good quality possible. Like I'm not going to go to somebody who's addicted to food and be like, no more burgers today. Well, why? It brings me comfort because it's killing you. Well, I'd rather be killed by something I love than survive in this world that I hate. So giving solutions instead of just problems really, really, really helps. And when you screamed out, well, I'll go to rehab. The first time it was just to say it to answer a question, but the second time you that was for real. The reason I started losing weight, and I talk about it a lot, is I was sitting in the Planet Fitness parking lot. I pulled down the mirror and said, I forgive you for everything you've done and what you have allowed people to do to you. I said it until I believed it. It was like 15 minutes of me just reciting this. But what came from it is truth. Came reality of, all right, well, if this is something you want, then you have to work for it. we can't say shit just to say shit. And when it comes out loud, that's why when people disagree with me or people are like trying to be mean, I try to ask them things to make it come out of their mouths, because I want everyone to hear how dumb you sound by saying, oh, this person can't get sober, it's their fault for this, and this. Do you hear what you're saying? And if you believe it, then when you're in this situation, I want you to believe that same thing, right? When your wife leaves you and you go to the bottle, I want you to believe the same thing. Oh, you're an adult. It's just a girl. It's all right. It's not possible, bro. Like we are on this earth together. Like, yeah, we come into this world alone, bro, but we need each other to thrive, to live, bro. And that's the beauty of like your story. And I was so glad that you reached out, because there was a couple people that I've had on the podcast that was in recovery as well. And everyone I met is just happier. And I'm not saying happier like every day is cool. They're happier because they survived, joy. Bro. Yeah, it's that real joy. It's the true appreciation of life. Because when you know, or like when I look back at old pictures and I saw how deadly obese I was, I appreciate this body now, because I'm like, bro, I was on the other side of that. I know everything that's over there and I don't want to go back. So I appreciate every little milestone. I appreciate every shirt size or whatever. And I'm pretty sure you feel that way as well, man. Like every time you think about having a drink, you're like, nah, but that's not me. Somewhere in you, that's another win.
You know, plus the thing is for me, man, so like I get to play Pennsylvania again for New Year's. I played last year.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to Florida. I got to travel, went to Georgia, Mexico. You know, I've been doing some pretty cool stuff in life lately. And every time that I go and do something like this, or when I have one of my label mates invite me out to, like, for example, I'm going to Pennsylvania, and when I go to these places, Florida and stuff, I don't stay in hotels, right? I stay in their houses. They let me sleep in their kids' room or on the couch, you know, whatever, just to save me money from having to go get a hotel room. Like, yeah, come up here, man, you know, I'll pick you up from the airport. We can come over. I could have never done that if I was still drinking and using.
Yeah.
I would not be welcome back, because I know the kind of person that I am. Right. So every time I go out here and these people are like, is it hard for you to get sober, stay sober when you're out here? It must be hard. You know, and some people in recovery, they believe that. And it's just like, I understand that. Like it's hard to be in a bar. It is. Right. I know what I'm there for, though. It's not like I'm going there to just hang out.
Right.
You know, I'm not going there just to, and I forget that sometimes, you know, like I'm not going to a bar just to hang out. I don't hang out in bars. And I have my number one rule, Frank. Do not get bored in a bar, you know? So if I feel myself getting bored, I'm just standing around, everybody's hanging out, I don't know nobody, I'll leave. Like, I have no reason to be here. If my set's done and I'm not hanging out with nobody or whatever, like, I'll just get in my car and I go. I don't owe nobody an explanation for that.
Right.
Right? It's at that point, it's life preservation. You know, I know what I would do if I started indulging. But like I said, with everybody on my label, they all know that I'm sober, right? So it's usually funny because the first time I went to Florida off of the Missouri thing, like the guys found out I went to AA that morning and did the show that night, and they thought that was the coolest thing in the world, that they invited me down to Florida to come and spend a week with them to record, shoot some videos. So I did. And that whole first week, they told all their friends, hey, check this out. This dude's coming up. He don't drink, he don't smoke, he's sober. You know, we're just gonna work on music.
Yeah.
So for a week straight, knocked out like 4 or 5 songs, 2 videos. It was dope, man. I was like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah.
You know?
And just imagine, let's just say you did party with them. You feel me? Like outside of being an addict on their side.
Yeah.
They probably wouldn't even have got a song.
They wouldn't have noticed, you know?
Yeah.
And they even told me that. My buddy Target told me one time, he's like, bro, we meet awesome artists all the time.
Yeah.
He's like, we didn't ask you down here because you're a great rapper or whatever. We asked you down here because you're good people. You know? And from that, I just kept hanging out with them and this, and then they kicked off the label, and it was only right. They were like, it's only right that you're here. So then they put me on the label, and here we go, 3-4 years now, and I'm going here, and I'm doing this, and I'm doing, and so I do all this stuff, and like now I'm usually the DD everywhere I go. They just tell me, he's like, you're fucking driving.
Yeah.
But I've been doing it with him for so long, like, you know, like I'm not bothered by it, but that doesn't mean that when I go down to Florida, there's a AA group that I go to when I'm down there. You know, if I go to Pennsylvania, there's an AA group I'll go to when I go to play. And it's more because, like, not because I think I'm going to drink, but it's more of one of those things. It's like, I like to go into these meetings that I've never been to before because it still feels like home. But it's like, hey, you know what? I'm your AA brother from Oklahoma.
And then,
you know?
just networking, man.
Meeting people and stuff. It's crazy, some of the people I meet. I'm not going to say his name, but there's a dude I met now in Oklahoma City, and he walked in there, and I was just like, you look like some of a lawyer. He had this suit on.
Yeah.
He was like, oh, how long do you? I was like, man, I'm just here for this thing. And he was like, oh, here, take my information. And had one of those little dot cards and put it on my phone. And it popped up, and it was like, attorney at law. And I was like, I knew you looked like a lawyer, man. You know, he's an attorney.
Yeah.
In an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, talking about not drinking. You know, I'm a street junkie. Been to prison, sitting next to an attorney. But in this room, we're the same.
Yeah.
You know, we're the exact same.
Exactly. That's beautiful. So tell me what it was like actually getting sober instead of your abstinence from it. So when you really decide, like, this is me putting in work, after you got busted out, coming out of the casino, when you finally figured out, like, all right, this is going to be my choice, my willpower. How difficult was that? Because now, instead of being forced, you're forcing yourself. You feel me? And that is the difficult part. When people talk about, like, the only thing that I can relate it to is like working out, right? I went to the gym sore, tired, 5 hours of sleep, and people don't understand it. But that discipline, it made it easier to go the next day, if that makes sense. But I knew if I stopped, it would be more difficult to go the next day, right? Like, let's just say chipping away at it only gets you 1%, but not going drops you 25%. And I see, like, going to AA or like talking to people is that chip of that 1%. Because like you said, if you start drinking, the world gets a little better, and you start to realize, like, yeah, everything I got is cool, but it would be cooler if I was drunk, or it would be cooler if I was this.
You know, man, see, I for the longest time I blamed my kid's mom for everything. But when I got sober, or when I went to the rehab, got out of rehab, moved into a sober living house, and I was in the sober living house for a few weeks, and my kids' mom, I get a hold of her finally, because at the time I think I was like 5 or 6 months sober, and I was like, I want to see my kids, you know, and she wouldn't let it happen. She's like, you don't get to see them, you know, you have to do this, and this first. And I was just like, yeah, this fucking bitch, you know.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'll figure this out, this and that, whatever. And but then she told me she was getting married, and broke my heart, because I was hoping, you know, get sober, get your family back. I knew she was seeing somebody. I didn't know how serious it was. And then I find out, you know, I ain't gonna go into too much of that. It's not my story. On her side, I mean, right. But you know, when she told me she was getting married, I was, you know, and then adoption came up. Her husband was going to adopt my kids, and that's when I realized, I was like, if I don't figure this out now, somebody else is going to raise my kids. And I was like, and when I found that out, I had two options. Because when I found out, I was angry, and I drink and I use over this woman all the time. She was my biggest excuse.
Yeah.
My biggest reservation, you know, is what we call it, reservations. If so-and-so happens, I'm going to go back after this happens. So she was my biggest one. If I can't get her back, what's the point? You know? And now here she is, she's getting married. And I was pinned against the wall, and it was like, am I going to go back out? Because that's what I want to do. You know? Or I'm going to call my fucking sponsor and tell him how I feel. So I did. Call my sponsor and told him how I feel. He was like, well, let's get started on your step work.
Yeah.
Right? Which is the step process, you know. And our number 4 is made it fearless and moral inventory, right? So what that means is I just wrote her name. Big letters. why are you so resentful for this woman? 'Cause she's a bitch and I hate her and she's getting married and all this other stuff and all this other stuff. And then it was like, okay, well, let's talk about it, but let's take her part out of it. What did you do? Well, if I really think about it, I cheated on her. I drug her and my kids through a life of addiction and drug use. I lied. You know, I was verbally, physically, and mentally abusive to this woman, you know, for 7 years. We didn't have no picnic. It wasn't all bad, but when it was bad, and it was mainly my fault, you know. Sold, I don't know how many cars, costed us so many different apartments for being drunk. Like, and when I looked at it that way, and now she's getting married to a man who is sober. They're both clean and sober because she had, like I said, she has her own story. But she was with somebody who was helping her pick her life back together. And they're both clean and sober. And, you know, and so when I looked at it like that, I was like, yeah, why wouldn't she want to marry somebody that's not me? And then what it did for me is it made the ground even. I no longer... Because the more that I blamed her for everything, her part became a mile high, and my part was this little bitty thing. Like, I didn't do nothing. It was all her. Because I told myself these stories, right? But then when I really looked at it for what it was, and I had to do that with the sponsor. I had to do that with somebody who didn't know my situation because he could say, are you sure that's how that went?
Mm-hmm.
Are you sure that's how that went? You know? And really, I could say yes, but then I'd just be lying to him for no reason.
Yeah.
You know, because that's the whole point about it. It's like being honest with yourself and another human being. I can know the truth in my heart, but if I don't tell somebody, I don't necessarily let it out, you know? And so when I did that, you know, and her part she became a little bit less of a villain. You know, and I became a little bit less of a victim. And it allowed me to look at the situation as it was. And then I could start to begin to forgive, you know. But until I could actually say, all right, Frank, you have a lot in this.
Yeah.
You know, seeing it from their perspective, I wasn't able to forgive. And when I did that, it didn't make it all go away, right? I still had problems with her. And I had problems with her for the first couple of years. But I made the decision to get up and pray for her and her husband. Right, and when I started, for the most part, it was just like, God, get them through the day, I guess. You know, don't let them die today. That's the best I got for them, right? And then it got to the point over a couple of years. I'm praying for their marriage. I'm praying that, you know, that God binds them together. That no man can break apart. That I'm praying for their financial, you know, security and all these things. Everything that I want for me, I'm praying for them. And now when I see them, we're not best of friends. I mean, hell, we still barely talk. But we don't fight no more, you know? We used to fight over everything. I've just found it's easier. Like, our Thanksgiving dinner is going to be tomorrow. Turkey tastes good on the 10th just as much as it does on the 24th or whatever is on today. This month, you know? Turkeys, my kids just want to be with us, you know? It doesn't have to be on Thanksgiving Day, but the first couple years, it had to be. This is mine, right? And it was more about fighting and not letting her get her way. And now it's kind of like, all right, you know what? We'll do Christmas. We'll do our Christmas a couple days before. I mean, my whole family, we've never done Christmas on Christmas Day anyways. So it's like, we'll just do ours. Her family has always done. They do the whole blowout for Christmas. Why would I take my kids from that? Because I'm not going to do that for them. You know, their mom can do that for them. So they get to still experience it. But it took me a while to get there, right? So we're starting to be more understanding towards each other. We don't argue as much. And this is 5 years in. But, I mean, it all had to start with me. Like, I had to find in myself how I can forgive, right? And how I can start to try to make amends or be on some kind of level ground. I couldn't sit around and wait for her to do it because she might never do it, you know? But that's not my side of the street, you know? Just like how some people, like, they get hung up on this victim thing, you know, whether it's their folks, something happens to them when they were a kid, it's their mom's fault, their dad's fault, and they feel like they're sitting over here and they're owed an apology. And it's like, yeah, you might be owed an apology, but there's a real chance that you might never get one.
Yeah.
Are you going to let this burden you? You know, I have a general rule of thumb, and I tell this to all my sponsors that I work with, like, do you have kids? Yes? Can't blame mom and dad no more. you are mom and dad.
Mm.
You know, I can't blame. And I thought for the longest time when I started getting my kids back, I was like, I don't know how to raise these kids. I never had a dad, and I said that for like 3 or 4 months. I didn't have a dad, so I don't know how to be a dad. I ain't have a dad, so I don't know how to be a dad. And someone pointed out to me inside of an AA meeting, and they were like, "There's a dad. There's 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 so many dads in here. You can just pick one, you know." And I was like, "Fuck, that's right." I'm in a room full of men who have fathered kids on the good side and bad side of life, grandfathers, great grandfathers. If I say that I have no father figure in my life and I didn't have one, so I can't be one, I'm lying. I'm lying to myself. And so I look at I grabbed a sponsor. Like I said, man, I grab people. I grab them. And it's like, you know what? Stop looking at it from poor me, from a poor me perspective, and so just all of my growing happened in this room, the room I'm talking about, the recovery room,
right?
And it just came from allowing people to come into my life, But yeah, definitely trying to get out of victim's mentality.
So a couple more things, and then we can head up out of here. So when you started to get your children back, 2 things. What was that feeling like for you? Because of course you said, I didn't know how to be a dad, but to know that you got to a point of success, that now the trust is there for you to have your children back. So what was that like for you personally? Because some people do it for their kids. Like I started losing weight for my son. Like my son, he has shown me what beauty is, what life is, what unconditional love is. And I will go, like you were saying earlier, I'll go to the end of the world for this kid. But it was the realization that, yeah, I'm powerless to everything that I couldn't control. But now that I'm his father and he's my responsibility, everything that happened prior to this point doesn't exist anymore. When people see me and they were like, well, you used to be 400 pounds or you used to be this type of man, that's cool. But who am I now? Yeah. Treat me for where I am, not who I used to be. So if you just want to talk a little bit about that, like now being a first time father to children who are old, like older. Yeah. Like what age did you get them back?
Let's see, man. Honestly, I've been in and out of their life for so long, but my oldest son is 17. He'll be 17 in February. My middle son,
February. Your birthday's in February, right?
Yeah.
My son's birthday's in February, the 11th.
Yeah, he's my son is the 10th.
Okay.
Mine's the 24th.
Dope.
So yeah, he'll be 17. My middle child is 13, and my baby turns 9 this month. So I've been in their life again for the last 4 years, 4 and some change. They remember a little bit of what it used to be like. My oldest son remembers a lot of what it used to be like. He's the one that was affected the most by
I'm the oldest, so I know that feeling.
But when I got him back, man, it was intimidating. It's still intimidating, but it was intimidating. It was like you start gaining trust back. My son, I don't think my middle son, he for the first year, like I'm gonna say the first 6 months to a year, he would still cry when he had to go home to his mom. He would just grab me and he would cry because he got so used to me leaving and not knowing when he was gonna see me again. I remember those moments break my fucking heart, dude. It was like, fuck, And then so as you start going along, I started going along and I'm getting my kids more and I'm establishing their trust again. It becomes fucking scary because it's like, have I arrived? Like, have I made the true decision to not go back? What if I fuck up? What if this happens? What if this happens? And then it becomes this thing. It's like, these are the ones that I don't want to hurt again. But I don't know. I know me and this and that.
Yeah.
So it was intimidating, man. It was scary as hell until one day I ended up getting this. I moved into a house when my buddy relapsed in the apartment. Moved into a different house with a different roommate. had an extra bedroom. He allowed me to use that extra bedroom, put a bunk bed in there, so that my kids had like a little room of their own.
Mm-hmm.
One of our cameras just died. Had a little room of our own, and had their own, and then when the first night that they slept in that room, I remember just making this decision, like they will always have a place.
Mm.
And then after a while they stopped crying when they had to go home. They just knew, hey, all right, Dad, we'll see you next weekend.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Just knew it. They just knew, and when they got football games and basketball games, they just know, like, Dad will be there. And if I'm not there, they know it's because I'm working or something's going on, or I would be there. But I'm at the next one. So I've learned to reestablish that trust with them, and that there's nothing like there's no price on that. You know?
That's beautiful, Frank.
Yeah,
man, this is amazing. I appreciate everything. Let's do something else, like more stuff. Don't have to be podcasting. Just
boxing.
I don't know. That'd be dope.